A lot of people want to know what the rules of planning permission are. How come the guy down the street can get a rear extension and I can't? How do I get a change of use? How do I get planning permission for new housing? How do I use permitted development? What's an HMO? How can I get planning permission for an HMO? All these questions get asked all the time, and you just need to implement a set of simple strategies to give you the best chance of getting planning permission every time that you apply. Anyone that's been through the planning system without a kind of strategy going into it will know how frustrating it can be. And over the years, it's created a whole multiple generations of people that just hate the planning system because of how unpredictable it is. But if you implement a set of simple strategies, then you can give yourself the best chance of getting planning permission, and you can be one of the few that actually maybe even enjoys the system and recognizes what it can do for you rather than it being a massive burden on what you want to achieve. So I've been a planning officer in my career. I've been in the planning industry for over 10 years, and I've seen applicants on both. So I've represented applicants, and I've also, determined planning applications for all types of things, for all the things I've mentioned, like HMOs, rear extensions, changes of use, new housing. And there were so many times that I've noticed that even just a simple tweak to someone's application would just give them the best opportunity. Or if it's not a tweak, it's just a bit of research that they could have done before. So this video kind of encapsulates that to give you the best opportunity, so you can use this maybe as a toolkit the next time that you go for planning permission. So before we get into the rules of planning permission, I just want to clear up one thing that kind of makes everyone so frustrated with the planning system, and it gets to what I was alluding to earlier about making multiple generations of people hate the planning system. And that's that question of, how come the guy down the road can get permission for something and I can't? How come they can get a change of use and I can't? And all the same thing, just how can they do it and I can't? And this reason is kind of used by planning departments countrywide every day, that just prevents so many people from getting planning permission for what otherwise would have been perfectly acceptable. And that is, so a planning officer will look at the planning history and look at what you're referring to, and they'll see that it was done a very long time ago, and they will just say, oh, it was done under a different policy framework a long time ago and I can't do it, and so you can't do it now. It was a different policy framework, it was a different climate, so you can't benefit from that. Now, I completely understand why that's so frustrating, and it kind of gets to what I will get to in a minute, which is checking the planning policy, because quite frankly, it wasn't too long ago where the kind of restrictions in the planning world were quite low. The barriers to entry for development were quite low. So it did create a lot of development that was otherwise unacceptable, massive extensions and things that just kind of harmed the environment, that kind of from that day on, probably since, well, certainly in my career, they've just kind of been clawing back every opportunity they can to kind of make sure that doesn't happen again, and basically from this point on trying to make acceptable levels of development. Now, sometimes that's fine, sometimes that is valid, but more often than not, just with the right scrutiny at appeal, that can be overturned. And because so many applicants just accept the council's reasons for refusal, and they just accept it and don't do anything and create the frustration I was talking about, it just gets accepted. Whereas if you just do the right scrutiny appeal, you could probably get over it. Or if you just did the first rule that I'm about to speak about now, that will get you, kind of get you in the best place to make sure that you don't even need to bother with all these age-old questions about how come they can't and how come they can and I can't. You know for yourself through doing your own research. So I just want to clear that up. Basically, planning has changed in the decades that it's been around. There's more and more restrictions as time has gone on, and just people back in the day basically applied at the right time, got what they could, and then now planning departments are just trying to claw that back. So I just wanted to clear that up. So let's get in the first rule of planning permission, which is what I've alluded to earlier, which is to check the planning policy. So if you want to see these rules applied in a kind of site-specific situation, I have done a video on this already, and that was how to get planning permission for new housing. In particular looking at garages, and it walks through each one of these steps as well. But for the first rule of getting planning permission is to check the planning policy. Planning policy, so as I was alluding to earlier, there's a different policy framework for proposals for development that got accepted in the 70s, 80s and 90s or whatever. But as I said, planning policies have got more and more strict as time has gone on. So it's a very simple step, but checking the current planning policy, and the reason it sounds so simple, and I'm sure you're well aware of it, but so many times I have determined applications where people just haven't checked the planning policy, and just such a simple thing could have been changed if they just done it. So I don't particularly like councils' websites. I find them really clunky, so I always find Google the best bet. So if you just type in local council planning policies, it'll take you straight to the page, and you can look at what policies are currently adopted. So that's key. What adopted policies, what policies are officers currently making decisions based on. Check those, and to look at what policies are relevant to your proposal. Now, if you're doing things like housing extensions or changes of use, more often than not, each council has guidance which kind of supports the policy for each of those things. So sometimes they're called supplementary planning documents, supplementary planning guidance. Some councils just have their own name for them, but you'll just see certain issues listed out, and it could be that there could be one for, say, housing extensions or development in conservation areas or whatever it is, and in there you'll find very specific guidance to what you're trying to do. So just check these things, because the answer just could be sat right in front of you, just ready to be kind of lifted and put into an application. So that first step, it might seem obvious, but so many people don't do it. So just check the planning policies, the current adopted planning policies, and also check the planning guidance for your area. So these next two steps are really, really important, and they are to check the planning history and also to do a site visit. Google Maps is fine and very, very helpful, and it kind of gives you a high level kind of assessment of an area, but doing a site visit is key, because if you do the first step I said earlier, which is check the planning history, which is every council has a database of every application that's ever been submitted, and if you find a property that you're interested in or you own, you want to check the planning history, you just go to the council and search for the records for that site. You might find a planning history in there that there's someone has already tried to do what you've done already or want to do, and it was refused, and there were specific reasons why. Now, a site visit will allow you to kind of come up with your own solution as to why a new proposal would be acceptable. There may be reasons of design, or it was too big, or the materials were wrong, or there may be reasons for things like amenity impacts. It impacted the enjoyment of someone else's house, and it impacted their privacy and things like this. Doing a site visit will give you a very, very clear picture of what could be done in order to remedy that impact, because so many people they know that they can get, say, a 3 meter or a 6 meter, or they can do an extension in principle, and they don't think about the kind of impacts either side, when just simple changes like insteps or anything like that will just completely change the development. It could make it an appropriate size, and it also could help with impacts on neighbours. So checking the planning history and doing a site visit are really, really key. Like I said, this fourth step is really, really important. So many people fall down on this last step, and it comes down to submitting a good application. And what does that mean? That means that you submit very clear information related to your proposal. So your description of development, exactly what it should be. So 3 meter rear extension, or change of use from office to resi, or change of use for a new HMO, whatever. Very, very clear. And also all the information that supports it, particularly the drawings, must be clear, because so many applications are just thrown out the window because officers don't understand what is being applied for. So, and don't hide anything, because it'll only get asked. So your drawings must be clear. So you need a clear site location plan, which is a red line, and then clear plans, elevations and sections for everything you're going to do. Very, very clear. So that's where a good architect or good CAD technician or whatever comes in, so that officers can clearly understand your proposal. But not only officers, also the community, because the better it is to understand from a drawing perspective, the better it is for other people to understand. So the community members, so your neighbours or anything like that. So the more information there is, the less scared that they will be, or the less fearful they will be of the eventual outcome. Because if you submit a very woolly application, Someone will just object on principle, the officer won't understand it, and then you're just you're in this bad place where you're heading for refusal. But just making everything as absolutely clear as possible. So a clear description of development, a clear description of development, a clear set of drawings, and then clear supporting information, whatever it is that you need, whether it's a design and access statement or a planning statement, whatever. But those the first things, the description of development and the drawing. So those are the rules of planning permission. And just to recap, check your current adopted planning policies. Check the planning history for your site and the surrounding area. Do a site visit, always do a site visit. And then the last step was to submit a very, very good application, a very clear one with clear drawings and information. You do all of those steps, and I just tell you, like, from an officer's point of view, if all of those steps are done and you've got a clear application in front of you and it's clear that the reasons why you've done that, because they've checked the planning policy, because they've checked the history, and because they've done a site visit, the information that you submit will be very clear, and it will show up in your application that you've done that work. Because so many applications are just thrown out because they're ridiculous, because no one has bothered to do those 3 steps. But if you've done those 3 steps, you'll be ahead of the game. So the 4 steps, you'll be ahead of the game, because so many people miss them and it just leads to refusal. And that's what creates this whole generation of people that hate the planning system, because they don't do the steps. They think they kind of devalue the system. They just think submit an application and a permission comes out. But really, doing the right research before you even start kind of takes the planning system and takes the council out of the equation, because you know it's right. You submit a right application, and then you value the process and you get your permission. So many people rely on the officers or the council to give them the decision, or to give them the information that they need to get permission. I've done videos on this before, but councils just don't have any time for that. They're so overstretched that they're not consultants as well, even if you go for pre-application advice, I'm sorry to say. But so do those 4 steps and you will be off to the races. So that's it. Those are the rules of planning permission. If there's any other strategies that you use that you think gives you the best opportunity to get planning permission, then please put them in the comments below. Or if there's anything that you want me to expand more on, I'll be happy to do a video on that. So like the video, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment below, and I will see you on the next video.